Okay. Hello and welcome to episode 214 of A Long Toss. I'm Scott Belford. This is the Walkoff. We are joined by our panelists. Now, we are going to introduce everyone here. We are waiting on one more, but we'll get going. Adam Mack, the best co-host in the biz, normally joins us, normally runs this show, but he can't find his microphone or his webcam. He just moved houses. So this is a moving thing that you got to deal with from time to time. So he is here. He just has no way of communicating with us. So holding down the fort, regular of the show, Baseball Jen, welcome back. Thank you so much. How was your weekend?
I spent more money than anticipated on a rear brake job today, and so I'm still reeling from that a little bit, but the Blue Jays can't stop winning. So
it's a beautiful thing.
Can't put the brakes on the winning there right now.
Also, welcome back. Very good friend of the show. We saw you on Thursday at the live show, buddy. That was a fun little endeavor. Joel, welcome to the show, pal.
Yeah, it was so fun to hang out with you guys live and get like a taste of the whole walk-off experience, being able to communicate with people live. That's a really fun situation, guys. Just it was really fun. It was a great bar, and I'm happy to always tune out when it's like within relative proximity. Calgary, got to do Calgary next time when you guys do Calgary.
Yeah,
I think Calgary's my radius. I'll expand out to Calgary.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Yeah, no, the live show was a lot of fun. And for everyone watching right now, we are loosely planning, hopefully, to be in Toronto. I know Adam and I are hoping for the spring where both of us can go down, and I might even be out there in September and we'll do something. So we have not forgot about you, Toronto. I know it seems weird that we're doing all these Blue Jays podcasts in Alberta, but this is where we live. So it's very convenient. Welcome to the show here, Lewis. Welcome back, buddy. Thanks to you. Glad you could make it.
Yeah, we've missed each other a couple times. We're glad to be on.
Yeah, it's been a while, but good to have you back on. So here we are. We are the best this team has been all year with where they are sitting. Okay. They are 8-1 in their last 9 games. They just swept a very good Arizona Diamondbacks team. And you know what? They did it in a way that didn't inspire the panic that sometimes the way they win does. So all in all, a pretty good weekend. We'll start with you, Lewis, the latest to join us here. When you look at this team and what they've done in the last 9 games, are you feeling satisfied? Do you feel your temperature rising on liking this team as an actual contender?
It's the best I've felt all year, for sure. And it's pretty funny to think that our one loss in our last 9 games was a no-hitter. I always think that's pretty funny.
But, to the Tigers, yes.
To the Tigers, yeah, it doesn't feel great. But in the midst of it all, we're still playing good baseball, even today. And just looking overall, like how the bullpen has done all year, like the bullpen is lights out right now. Jimmy Garcia was a question mark was a question mark to start. Pearson was a question mark to start, just making his way onto the roster. But Tim Mays is amazing. Even look at the Jays earlier in the year. If Romano was out earlier in the year with his back problem, it's tough to say that the Jays team would have really solidified the bullpen in the way they have with his absence. So no, I'm just so excited with how the pitching staff has been able to take it to a new level when it really matters.
That is nailing it, Lewis. That's exactly what I was about to say, is that it may not feel like it, but this bullpen has been lights out, especially recently. And if you brought up Tim Meza, I know we talk Trevor Richards all the time. These are 2 guys that Blue Jays faithful were ready to fire into the sun like only 6 months ago. So pretty great to see how big they have come up, and to see guys like Jay Jackson being called up from AAA and contributing and getting it done. Pretty exciting stuff. Joel, when you look at where this team is, only 7 games back of the division, and I don't want to jump off the deep end here, but with the fact that the Rays have cooled so much and the Orioles are starting to look beatable, is the division completely out of the realm of possibilities? And do you think, I know 2 weeks ago, the talk was maybe we should be standing pat at the trade deadline. Maybe we should be a buyer and a seller. Is that changing in your mind? Is this a point in this organization, in this World Series contending window, that maybe sitting pat or just kind of bolstering around the peripheral is not the way to go?
Oh, well, yeah, we're going on to that topic. Yeah, no, it's in this situation of right now, you're coming off that White Sox, Tigers, Arizona, you roll through that really, really well. Does that define that you feel truly competitive against the teams that you have to beat in the playoffs? I don't think it says that, but it definitely, it's that part of the season where the Reds had it, that winning streak that the Reds went on pretty much is defining their season right now. You find that soft period of your schedule. And this year, more than any year, the Jays are going to find those clusters of nice sections of games where you can take 7 of 8, 8 of 9, like we just have. I feel like you're sitting in a situation today. You swept, but the issue with the pitching, with Ryu coming back and Kikuchi only getting, really 2 runs through the rotation. It's like we're missing a guy. Manoah's back, but the question marks of will he be up or down for the rest of the season are still up in the air. So like, I still think you need to make moves. You need to be rather aggressive, especially we can't guarantee that Bo and Vladdy will lock up long-term here, right? We can't guarantee that yet. We don't know if that's the truth. So if we're worried about keeping the cookies in the like the cupboard because we want to keep prospects, those are our prospects. If we feel like those guys are leaving, that's how we restock the cupboard, right? So I feel like we have to be in a situation right now where we can move those pieces to make this team way more competitive right now in hopes to win now and prove to those guys that it is a place to stay long-term. So I wouldn't be afraid of making big moves, because if it doesn't work out, those are the guys that are going to fill up your prospects and you're going to move up to top 5 in the prospect list because you moved Bo Bichette for, an entire farm system.
And we will dive more into that. I do wish to focus a little bit on this Arizona series. I know that Blue Jays Nation has been feeling a little LFL, longing for Lourdes since he left. And he had a really big series. But you know what was kind of cool to watch is Varsho showed up as well. Moreno had a pretty good series. These guys kind of showed up to play against their own team or their old teams there. Jen, what was your feeling on the series in general?
I mean, first of all, I just, seeing the team come out of the All-Star break and hit the ground running was a really positive boost, I think, for both the team as well as the fan base. Because I think we were all really ready to be quite angry after that no-hitter against Detroit. And they almost lost the 3rd game of that series. And depending on sort of how things went, I think coming out of that All-Star break was really going to sort of set quite a tone. And so, that Arizona team is a good team. They do have the benefit of playing in the division that they're in, mind you, but they're still a pretty decent team. And to see the Jays take all 3, really does suggest that, maybe they've got some momentum. I don't know. I see the comment from Taco Time. I also needed new calipers. So just a FYI, it was an expensive day, Taco Time. It cost me about as much as it'll cost the Jays if they, just pay Mitch White to go away. But no, I mean, that's exactly what you wanted to see out of this team right now. The one caveat is that we've seen this team perform well and then never actually pick up momentum. So I'm really interested in seeing, whether or not they can build from here with the day off tomorrow and a disappointing Padres team coming to town. The pitching has been far better, I think, than anybody could have expected. And even looking at that bullpen, I'm not entirely sure they need to add another bullpen piece. To be completely honest, it would be nice, but I don't think it's a need. Whereas earlier in the season, we were saying that it was an absolute need. So they're in a really interesting place right now. And I always want, to see a team go big at the deadline. They're, I think, 1.5 games up where they are in the wild card position. I think they're 5 games behind Baltimore. As you said, 7 games behind the Rays. I still don't think they'll catch the Rays, but I certainly think they can make it interesting here.
I kind of feel the same way, Jen, is I look at what the Rays are, and I don't think that this team has it in them in the last 75 games or whatever it is right now to catch them fully. But I do think they can get within that 3 games and really make it interesting in September and really make them sweat, which would be beautiful. And another thing that stood out about this Arizona series and this Jays team coming off the All-Star break is some late inning runs. Like all year long, it has felt like if this team is tied or losing going into the 7th, like good night. And all 3 games, they managed to either come up with big runs to, give them a bigger lead, a little bit of breathing room, or even just to come all the way back. We saw Danny Jansen with the heroics on that last game in Detroit. This is not something we were seeing a month ago, and I find it very encouraging. Is that a silver lining?
Production from the bottom of the order.
Right?
Yeah, production from the bottom of the order in several of these recent games, I think really was sort of the cherry on top of those wins.
Okay, so basically chat is very, very into the fact that Mitch White did make things more interesting than they probably had to be at the end of this game. Now, Mitch White is an interesting case here, and it goes into our next topic beautifully because Hyun-Jin Ryu, almost all the way back from Tommy John surgery. He pitched in Buffalo last night. He pitched 5 innings, gave up an earned run. He averaged, I think it was 89 miles an hour on his fastball, but that's Hyun-Jin Ryu. It's down a little bit from a couple seasons ago, but honestly, he's probably going to get back to where he was, which was never a power pitcher. He's 35 years old, but we talked about on Friday, Joel, or I guess Thursday night for the live show, we talked about how overworked this bullpen has been. They have been incredible, but when you go down the list of names that are on pace to break their career records for innings pitched, it's kind of a scary endeavor, especially when you know darn well that was part of what contributed to Manoah's downfall this season, right? It's just a little bit of being overworked. I know there's a laundry list of reasons, and if we could pinpoint exactly what it was, it would all already been done, but it is a dangerous thing to do. So looking at the 40-man roster, it just makes sense that maybe it would benefit the bullpen, would benefit this starting staff to go to a 6-man rotation for a little while when Hyun-Jin Ryu comes in. Of course, to do that, you're only allotted 13 pitching spots, so you'd have to go with 7 men in the bullpen. Is that enough, Lewis?
One of the big things about this rotation is their ability to eat innings. That has been, like, our staff has barely gotten injured this year, and even with the loss of Manoah, they've been able to make it back. So I don't really think it's a matter of the starting rotation, but as you said, it's probably the bullpen, and even like Swanson having to pitch today. That wasn't something. That's the biggest problem with Mitch White. Like, you just have to get those outs. Those are 3 of the easiest outs a manager is ever going to ask from you, and you just need to get them out. So I think a 6-man would be awesome, but I think a 6-man should be done when you get someone at the deadline, because I'm not sure if Ryu can be that guy. I love Ryu, and I will eat my words if he can get guys out in the big leagues. But we all watched post sticky stuff ban leading into a surgery. He was throwing pitches down the middle, change-ups, cutters. Sure, I don't know. People are getting at me on Twitter a little bit for that Mitch White thing, but Mitch White didn't help me out today. But I don't know. It's tough for me to believe he forces his way into this rotation.
There are lots of reasons to doubt Hyun-Jin Ryu, 35 years old and coming off Tommy John surgery. Let's face it, most pitchers coming off Tommy John surgery, we really see them return to form the year after they return, right? Like that first year, they're just kind of finding themselves again. Now, that said, Ryu is in the best shape of his life. I mean, if you've seen pictures of the man, he's
I
down
have.
35 pounds from when he was pitching with this staff at the beginning of 2022. I'm not saying that's going to translate into anything, but he at least looks ready to go, and he looks like he's motivated, which is a big piece of the puzzle here. Jen, when you think of Hyun-Jin Ryu and how this starting staff should be manipulated for the rest of the season, or even, we don't need to go that big of a sample size, even the next month, what would you like to see happen when Ryu returns? Can you see him being added to this rotation? Do you see Kikuchi in the bullpen? What's your vision?
I could see a potential 6-man rotation for a couple of weeks, because I think they need to see what they've got, not just in Ryu, but also still in Manoah. Because yes, Manoah did have a good game against Detroit, but that was the first game back. And they really don't know if that is a turning point for him, or if whatever was haunting him for you know, the first few months of the season, you know, comes back to haunt him. And I really think that they need to see what they have in those pieces, on top of the fact that Ryu and Gosman both pitch better on an extra day's rest. So I could see them rolling out the 6-man and then from there making a decision. I think the roster crunch does make it really hard to go with a 6-man rotation for the rest of the season, right? So I think they need to see, as you said, can Ryu actually work his way into this rotation? What can we reasonably expect from him? Is Kikuchi best served by going back into the bullpen like they did last season? You know, is Manoah back where they can put him out there every 5 days and he's going to be able to give them a decent shot at winning, right? These are questions that still need to be answered.
You just hit on the biggest asterisk in this whole puzzle is Manoah. Is he back? So going to chat here, Daltmer says, with how solid the bullpen has been, the Jays can probably afford to shorten it. It still makes me a bit nervous, though, rocking the boat like that. And that is a very good point. Taco Time says Manoah gets blown up next start, which if that's the case, again, Manoah's a big question mark right now. And Joel, when you look at Alek Manoah, obviously he's a work in project, a work in he's not done. He's not fixed is what I'm getting to here.
Not at the top of the mountain. He's at like base camp 1. Yeah,
exactly. So trying to get him right for the end of the season here, as we approach the playoffs, what would you consider a success out of Alek Manoah over the last 2 months of the season?
Well, to play on the entire pitching aspect of things through Manoah, I guess is what I'll do is you don't know day to day what you're going to get from him. So that not knowing whether a blow up leads to a demotion is a very inconsistent part of your roster, right? When it comes to going to that 6-man rotation, I really feel it's going to be this kind of like amalgamation of what we've seen already, but just add another pitcher to the situation. Like I could totally see us have all of these, have these pitchers here, but still see a Trevor Richards opening game. You know, I could still see that thrown in occasionally, right? Like I would still leave myself open to, oh, Richards hasn't played a bunch of games. Let's have him play an opener situation, run that good bullpen, because we've had 3 great starts in a row from, I don't know, Barrios, Gosman, you know, whatever the case may be. So I feel like 6-man rotation is just kind of put in a position where like you'd like it maybe where Kikuchi could be used hypothetically out of the bullpen, right? Like if you go to 6-man and he's only pitching 75 pitches every time he rotates through that rotation, maybe he becomes usable as a lefty out of the bullpen on occasion, right? It's making everybody, they're not coming from me, I swear to God, if you hear that side of it. Yeah, no, I think it's having another pitcher and just allowing the situation to play your hot hand is probably what's going to happen for the rest of the season, right? So it's going to be like a little bit of mixture of what you've seen, hopefully with another starter kind of thrown in the mix.
And I think to Joel's point, if they're not willing to let Kikuchi go 3 times through the rotation, if they're going to pull him at the very first sign of trouble, which is what they've done the past 2 starts,
Yeah.
and they've pissed him off both times. You can see that he is not at all happy that he doesn't have the trust of his manager. But if that's what you're going to do, and that's how you feel about his ability, then maybe, that is what they are thinking about, right? They really do have to see what they've got in Ryu and Manoa, right? To make that call. But I do think all of these options are in play at this point.
So this wasn't really on our list of topics, but I did wish to bring it up here. Danny Jansen just continues to show what he can do, not just behind the plate as a great defensive catcher who can call a great game, but he also is flashing power. He's flashing the bat. And this stood out to me. I saw these stats on Twitter. Okay. So this is Alejandro's Kirk OPS by month over the last 2 years. So in 2022, his April OPS was 584. May was 984. June was insane. June, he was a 1086. 721 in July, 667 in August, and a 691 in September. Very good numbers. We can tell right across the board why he was in the All-Star game. He had a rough last 2 months. Okay. Coming into 2023, his OPS in April was 836. Very respectable. May 563, June 615, and in the month of July, he's been an OPS of 232. Basically, Alejandro Kirk, offensively, despite the fact putting up very good defensive numbers, has been a disaster. Is Danny Jansen your starting catcher? Like, has Alejandro Kirk started to get to the point where it's like, let's just see him once every 4 games?
Danny Jansen was always their number 1 catcher, right? From an organizational standpoint, he was that guy that they were developing in the minor league system to be that guy. And, we saw when he was in the minors that he was, really great with the bat and could hit for power. And that didn't quite translate when he came up to the big leagues. It took him some time to kind of find his legs and get going with the bat. But when we have seen absolute flashes of brilliance from this guy at the plate. And he seems to have just improved, right? Year over year, on top of being able to call and catch a good game. But he was always the guy. And this is, obviously hindsight is 2020, but I said last year that they should have traded Kirk because his value would never be higher. Never be higher. Absolutely. Keep the kid, right? Moreno. Trade Kirk because he'll never, ever have higher value for you. I don't know what he would have gotten back in return. Obviously, that's a whole other conversation, right? But, and now here they are where, he is more of a liability at the plate. And on top of that, he's a terrible base runner. So yes, Jansen absolutely is their number 1, their catcher.
And I think everyone needs to remember too, Danny Jansen called up at the beginning of 2018 and has really helped lead this pitching group, but not just the pitching. He's really helped lead this core all along, right? He was on that 2018 AA New Hampshire Fisher Cats team that won the championship with Bo and Vlad and all the guys, right? He has led this team at its lowest points, and everyone knows what a learning curve there is on catching. It's one of the most rigorous and difficult positions in baseball, and there's a lot of responsibility on it. And to see him kind of coming into his prime, not just behind the plate, but at the plate offensively, but then also just mentally, and how well he takes that all on. Man, 2023, the season of Danny Jansen, like, I think he could still hit 25 home runs, which is insane considering he missed a month of the season. Lewis, when you look at Danny Jansen, where would you like to see him hitting in this batting order? Is he too far down the order in your opinion?
That's been one of my problems with the Jays lineup. It's always remained pretty rigid, like with Springer in the leadoff spot, Bo and Vlad. Well, obviously they're going to find themselves in the 2 and 3. But I wish we'd go back to what we did with Lourdes a little bit. Like we see him up in the 3 spot sometimes, as low as a 7, depending on how he was doing. And I think Danny is just one of those difference makers with the bat that when you see guys in runners in scoring position, you want to see Danny at the plate because he's going to have a good AB. And if he makes contact, it's going to be loud in the air and probably to the pull side. And that's where all the damage is done in baseball for a majority of, runs scored. So no, I love Danny, and I think higher in the lineup is always going to be better for him. And you got to maximize on when he is playing because catchers are usually part-time and he's usually injured. So got to get that bat in the lineup in the best place possible, and that's higher.
And I mean, I already know what you think about this, Joel, but I will give the floor to you here because I love the way you compare Danny Jansen to Marcus Semien. And what I loved when you made that comparison is the comments went insane. People were calling you an idiot. They were like, "You're a freaking moron. This just proves once again, hey, Kami doesn't know baseball." But then you break down the stats and it's like, no, they're literally identical.
Carbon
what are you
copies of
talking
each
about?
other.
Carbon copies.
Yeah. It's ridiculous, the like inspiration clearly that Semien had on Danny. Like we've talked about it. You had him on the show. He's talked about it. And he hasn't changed his approach at home to the ballpark. The ballpark has changed. Hey, there's you could shoot the ball to the opposite field. He's like, my best success is getting on top of a fastball, finding a mistake pitch over the middle and hitting it as hard as I can. That's my goal. And he goes up there with that approach, and that is very old school run producer mentality of a hitter. I'm going up. If you make a mistake to me, I will change the score, especially if there's runners on base, right? And I've had the mentality of hitting top 4, but like approach it very much the way that you would approach having Marcus Semien in your lineup. Where would Marcus Semien hit? That's where Danny should hit. That's really, since the very beginning of the season, I felt that way. And he only keeps succeeding down in like the 7 hole. I'm like, eventually that's a ladder he should be climbing up. And, I like the idea of, you can lengthen the lineup so much that way. You do a situation where you would platoon maybe Kiermaier and Merrifield at the top. You put Bo in the 2 spot. You put Vladdy 3, Springer, Jansen 4, 5, Chapman 6, Belt 7, and Varsho 8 into the opposite of the platoon from Witt and Kiermaier would be 9, right? You're up against a lefty, Kiermaier's 9. If you're up against a righty, Kiermaier's 1, right? And you just rotate through that, and all of a sudden the lineup feels long and threatening all the way through, right? So, and I did not mention Alejandro Kirk's names in when I mentioned that lineup. So he really, if you were able to put him consistently, Kirk last year in the 4 hole, I can't see why you wouldn't have opportunities for Jansen to be hitting 4 or 5 consistently
and
for the rest.
And that's where I want to see Jansen. I want to see him in that 4 hole or 5 hole. The only thing that has kept Danny Jansen from truly replicating Marcus Semien is the fact that he hasn't been able to stay healthy. But if you look at Danny Jansen's last 162 games, he has over 30 home runs. He has over 100 RBIs. His numbers are almost exactly where Marcus Semien is. They're both pull hitters.
A little higher.
Yeah, a little bit higher. They're both pull hitters. They both fit into that middle of the lineup really well. I don't know if I like them as high as you, Joel, in the 2 hole, but I do get what you're saying, though. I totally get the point you're making, which is Danny Jansen should be in a place where he can drive in more runs.
Absolutely.
which isn't the 8 hole. Okay, I do want to quickly touch on Will's got a great comment here. Will G says, league adjusts, guy struggles at a bit. Then player adjusts again. Won't apply to Kirk, ? He's young. Will get back to the bat. So basically what he's saying is, the league adjusts and he is young. Kirk is only 24 years old. Lots of experience still to come in his career. Who is Alejandro Kirk Lewis, in your opinion?
This year is a wash for me. I think I've been seeing some numbers on his swing and his bat approach. Like his bat path is not the same as it was in 2021, 2022 when he was doing the most damage. I think I always hate saying this, but I think conditioning is part of it. I think probably having a kid is part of it. Like these are major things in life, and baseball doesn't come first when you're having a kid. So I think Kirk is fine. I think you give him an off season to come back, be with Danny, split things up next year. He'll be just fine with the bat. And even this year, like he has more WAR than Moreno, and Kirk can't even hit at all. And Moreno's struggling as well. But that just goes to show Kirk's defense and how much of a good ball player he is. Like look at his OBPs, like his K to walk ratios are very similar. He's got the same eye at the plate. It's just about that bat and just sorting some things out there. Kirk's a great hitter. He'll stick around. He'll be fine.
I agree with that. I think Kirk will be fine. And there's ups and downs. 162. And it's funny how season to season can really, especially with a young ball player, a season can be a wash real quick. He started slow, came in late, just never really seemed like he got his feet under him, which it's too bad. And it's definitely affected the Blue Jays without a doubt. Okay, this next topic, unless anyone has anything else to wrap up here on the catching situation. Okay, we'll move along. I saw a update on Addison Barger the other day, basically saying that it looks like he's going to need to undergo surgery in the off season, with some real rehab taking him maybe even to midseason next year. Now, I'm not saying Addison Barger is a top prospect or anything like that. He's a good kid. He's moved up the rankings. Can he be a legitimate third baseman at the big league level is yet to be seen, but he continues to progress. And he's kind of the guy that the Blue Jays had pegged as a possible third base replacement for Chapman as he goes out in 2024. So I do want to talk real quickly about the 2024 third base conundrum that the Blue Jays are currently in. Because if you do look at their system, especially now that we know that Addie's probably needing surgery and not even going to be available to start the 2024 season, where is everyone at on the third base position next year? Aroldis Martinez has made some big improvements in his game. He actually broke back into the top 100 according to Baseball America on their prospect ranking, which is very impressive. 21 years old. He's young. He's probably ready to get the call up to AAA. That said, starting Aroldis Martinez at third base in 2024, I just don't think it's going to happen. Jen, when you look at third base, and we've seen what messing around at the hot corner can do for a team, 2021, it's probably the reason they didn't make the playoffs, and that is not offense to Cavan Biggio. That is a shot at the front office for putting him in that position. But third base is important. Where do you envision this organization going at the hot corner?
That's a great question. And this was one of the topics that I had. This was my top of my list topic, was what do you do with Matt Chapman and moving on from him, because I just seriously doubt that they're going to end up re-signing him. And so that is very much a question in my mind, and I really don't know. And I think it's
because the free agent market sucks too.
So I was going to say, like, it's even bigger than that, because, if they're not going to be able to sign him, do you try to trade him to get some value? And does that make your team worse trying to make a playoff run? Like, how do you approach that? On the one hand, I'm really, we could be the Yankees fans screaming about the third base situation right now.
We really could. It's scary.
And it is really fun to sort of see that. I'm not going to lie. But my point is what I'm trying to go with is that I don't know how to answer this question. That was why it was one of my topics, because I was going to ask you guys to answer it.
Joel, what would you do for the third base position then? Because there is a big question mark there.
Yeah. The roller coaster of Matt Chapman is really interesting, right? Like that first month, you're like, this guy is going to go to free agency and he's going to make $250 million. And now, he's cooled down. He's still over an 800 OPS. The defense hasn't, maintained the platinum form that it has. He's still really a consistent,
but he's been really good. Yes.
Yeah. Like he's still a really great defensive. Like, I think if you take that step to a 21-year-old third baseman next year, you're really going to take that hit and all sailing into the stands. And you're going to really go, oh, wow. Like, I think we're in this point now where we're low on Chapman, but what he brings to the table will be instantly forgotten once you replace it with something that isn't as consistent as he's actually been able to be, especially defensively. So there is no possibility of him re-signing, right? That is just out.
Think so.
That's just absolutely out, right? That's
he's the top third baseman free agent next season without
absolutely
a doubt.
The top
without a doubt. And he's represented by Scott Boras Corp, who no way they give a discount on the
that came off as a question,
third
but that was like an 80% statement, right?
Yeah.
Like that was like, hey, there's no. So like that makes me feel like, okay, when earlier the topics have been how you approach the trade deadline and like, do you stay? Is that a move that seems like you're costing the team, but you have to almost make it to? Because the loss next year is going to be, like you said, the Kevin Biggio third base in 2021 probably cost the team. So you can't.
Like SV probably could fill third base hole defensively. I just don't know how I feel about
taking another huge hit in the
bat
lineup.
at third base at the hot corner, right?
Yeah. So you're put in a position where if you don't think you can't. First of all, there aren't really many options after Matt Chapman free agency wise. So you're not going to be getting his replacement free agency wise. So it's like you almost have to, a lot of trades have been proposed very much one third baseman for another. I know you were talking the insanity, Scott, of going to St. Louis and trying to
bring me Nolan Arenado, I said, yes.
Right? Like, and do a third baseman for a third baseman deal just to try to bring in that, like, at least there you're actually making an upgrade, but it's you can't take that step back at that position because we've seen what this team is with that hole there. So I feel like that might be a move where you might have to take a little bit of a hit, but you can't take the full-on hit of the absolute loss of Chapman, right?
Well, that's just it. Like right now, I mean, regardless of the fact that he's cooled off at the plate, your lineup is way worse if you were to trade him, right? Way worse. And I don't see that being a viable option for a team that is in the playoff race. And, assuming they make the playoffs, right? And we're going to assume that they are, wanting to make a deep run. I just don't see how you could trade him to try to get some value, knowing the hole that it's going to leave. But then the flip side is they have to fill that hole next year anyways. So how do you do that? How do you balance that?
And just to reiterate, I know maybe I didn't communicate this well enough in chat here, but by no means, in my opinion, this Toronto Blue Jays team in 2023 is a playoff team. I'm not saying to move Matt Chapman now by any means. I'm just saying there is a serious hole at third base come 2024. And the only way that I can see moving Matt Chapman is if for some crazy reason, this organization finds a way to fill that third base hole at the deadline, and then they can move on from Matt Chapman and get whatever you would get in return there. Lewis,
there seems to be a coinciding move that's needed.
Yeah, like the idea of moving him isn't to be a seller, right? So like that's not what we're suggesting. We're not saying that the Jays are sellers at the deadline, so get rid of Matt Chapman. That's not the point any of us are making.
No, for sure. So especially with Addison Barger being injured, like that was such a red flag when I saw that. I was like, well, there's like our backup plan gone. So I know we're going to talk trade deadline a bunch. I guess this is as good a place as any to get into it. It's been mentioned quite a few times in chat. about the fact that this team does need a bat. I think that goes without say. Lewis, you're a creative outside of the box thinker. When you look at this Toronto Blue Jays team, what are its areas of need? And do you have any actual names or places to go in particular where you're like, you know what, this would be a great fit?
Just on the Matt Chapman stuff, I was thinking about that. I think it was a week ago. I was just going through all the teams because when I think about trading guys, you also have to think about the team that you're trading with. And I was like, okay, who is going to want Matt Chapman? They have to be a playoff, close to a playoff. They have to be a playoff team. They have to be someone who's willing to go out of their way to give up assets to get this player. And I was thinking, what about the Giants? And what if we got JD Davis? He's got 1 more year as a third baseman after this year. He's a worse hitter, worse defensively. But I think that fit for a Giants team that isn't getting older. He's getting a better player now, while we get a player, who's worse in all those areas, obviously, but we get that extra year. That was just a hypothetical I had in my mind. Similar thing with the Phillies. They had a third baseman, but I looked at Bohm's numbers and he's terrible.
Yeah.
But anyway, to your question about where
I went
help,
down that rabbit hole too, Lewis, where
I was like,
oh, what's Alec Bohm? And then I'm like, yikes, that is
yeah, not good. But no, where we need help is, I think we just need 1 more outfielder. I look at the bullpen, I think it's fine. I think you can maybe get a starting pitcher who, I don't see them getting a starting pitcher who's like starting game 3 of a playoff game. Stroman maybe is like the most, like, I wouldn't say they would make that trade, but that type of player is the highest I could see them go for a pitcher. But I think it comes down to a 4th outfielder, DH, Teoscar Hernandez. That's the guy's crushing lefties this year, even though he's never done that really before. You could go Tommy Pham with the Mets, but for me, it just comes down to getting a guy who smashes left-handed pitching and plays the outfield. That's my only real concern with the deadline.
We go out, we get Teoscar Hernandez, Marcus Stroman, and Julian Merriweather, and we call it a day.
Yep, throwing Brandon Drury, throwing everyone,
Throwing Brandon Drury. Have
a good time.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what Seattle does, because they are kind of in a weird spot right now where they've got to make some. I mean, for lack of a better analogy, they got to shit or get off the pot, because they could really screw themselves if they don't get assets back for some of these expiring contracts they have. But also, they might not want to move on from them and then screw themselves over that way as well, and just eliminate themselves from the playoffs when they're known for good second halves. Joel, when you look at the Seattle Mariners, can you see them being sellers, full-on sellers? Can you see Teoscar Hernandez being available? And I'm not even saying he's the best fit, but he might be the best fit.
He's the best fit.
It's just so funny. He absolutely, like Lewis says, is a lefty destroyer. Just has been for 3 years now. He would, we know what he is, and we know how he fits in this lineup, and it would weirdly enough kind of remedy the over pursuit, I believe, of defense that we did in the offseason, and like kind of that. All of a sudden, you bring just one of those 2 guys back, right? And this lineup, and I think we realized the fact that a guy like Teo, despite his defensive lacks and his liabilities, the fact that he is hitting, you never take him out of the lineup against any pitcher. There's no pitcher where you go, Teo's not going to catch up to 102. You feel like Teo is the guy who's going to get up to 102. And that's what makes you clutch in the 7th and the 8th and the 9th. And that's what we need. We need that one more guy. So it's just this full circle thing with me, that if we end up getting Teo back, I don't know, I'm going to have it's going to be very emotional, but that might be exactly what we need. Is that a possible? What are the trade pieces back, right? Like,
that's what I was just going to ask Jen. I was just going to be like, what do you envision, Jen, as a trade package for Teoscar, and how expensive is he going to be? Like, is there any possible way he costs as much to get back as it cost the Mariners to get him?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Seattle is tied with the. Pardon me.
He's so good.
Yeah, Seattle.
Eric Swanson. I mean, come on.
Well, Seattle is tied with the Angels. They're 5 games out of a wild card spot. And I think if you're Seattle, you need to be realistic about this. They're not out of it, but they're out of it, right? Probably. And so, you know, it is an expiring contract. You're probably not re-signing him. How much use is he down the stretch to you if you're already 5 games out of the wild card spots or more by the time the deadline rolls around? That expiring contract is why I think they could get him back for less than what Seattle gave up to get him. So I don't know what it would take, but I don't think it would take the same level to get him back. And I agree with Lewis. He's pretty much the best fit out there for all of these reasons, because he is hitting lefties well, because you can put him in the DH spot. You can put him in the outfield if you have to. You know, he doesn't have to like meld into the team. It will be a seamless transition, right?
Perfect.
It would be a perfect scenario if they could do it.
I know it's a long shot, and I know that his bat will be well sought after, right? Like there'll be lots of competition for Teoscar Hernandez on a playoff team. But like you said, Jen, like he'd walk back into that clubhouse and it would be a freaking celebration. Like it would be so cool. I don't know if they could pull it off, but it would be pretty darn fun.
I don't know if they could
That's
either,
fun.
but I sure as hell they're picking up that phone, right?
Yeah.
Just picking it
How
up
would
at the
the-
All-Star game, right? So maybe.
What'd you
Imagine
say,
that
Barry?
GM would feel pretty bad. Dipoto having to trade Teo back to the team you just eliminated in the postseason just a year ago. That would feel kind of bad, but no, I think the Jays would be willing to give up a little more just to get that guy back in the clubhouse.
Yeah. The Angels, speaking of the Angels, they are all but out of it. And we are going to talk Shohei later in the show here. I'm not getting to that yet. But when you look at the Angels, there are some viable pieces there that could be moved as well. What would you guys think of an addition like a Hunter Renfroe?
Perfect. Goes along those lines. His lefties, I'm pretty sure. Let me check.
Yeah, double check that.
No,
Much
but
better defensively.
we just, I'm on it. But no, we just need DH outfielder who gets the job done, and he's a power hitter. He's been for a while. Let's see if he can hit lefties.
That really does
He's
seem to be
even against both.
their
It's like-
number one need at this point, right? And back to what we were saying earlier, if the bullpen is looking as solid as it's looking, whether or not they can keep that up for the remainder of the season, because some of them are going to be quite overworked by that point. You know, the rotation, there are some question marks there, but by and large, you know, between Gausman, Barrios, Bassett, right? You know, this is their biggest need. So maybe this not needing to go out and necessarily get that bullpen, that premier bullpen piece or this or that does mean this is where you're allocating the assets towards.
And Teoscar, like the lefty, like let's talk about how good he is against lefties. If you are up against a lefty, Teo is the best hitter on the team. That's how good he is against lefties. He is the best hitter on the Blue Jays if there's a lefty starter on the mound. So that is game changing. You're acquiring the best hitter on your team when a left-handed pitcher is on the mound. And that's a big, you know, you're up against Carlos Rodon. You're up against somebody who's left-handed. That's a drastic shift in one player, right? You're literally adding your best hitter in a player.
And it's funny because I know there's been a few times in the chat where they've been like, well, where would you even put Teoscar? Is it wrong to say who cares?
Yeah. Just let him hit.
In the 4-hole?
Like,
I think what they meant was like in the field, Joel. You're like in the 4-hole.
It's not nearly as important as the 4-hole.
Yeah.
It's a good problem to
Super catcher.
have. And why do they care? They need them for a playoff run. They need them into the playoffs. What does it matter?
Yeah.
So this is messed up because this was pointed out on Twitter earlier today, and it's the Blue Jays record versus the NL, who they have just dominated. It is ridiculous. 3-0 against the Braves, 3-0 against the Mets, 3-0 against the Pirates, 3-0 against the Diamondbacks, 2-1 against the Marlins, the Brewers, the Giants. 1-2 in that first series of the season against the Cardinals, and then that flop 0-2 against the Phillies that I saw live. But a pretty darn good record, 16-7 against the National League team. Is it crazy to say just get to the World Series and we got it looked after?
Easy as that.
So I literally brought this up so that we could talk the AL East.
Yeah, I was going to just say, you transition our record out of the AL East, isn't it pretty much across 5 divisions? Our record is like that, across 5 of 6 divisions in baseball, we smoke, right?
Completely dominate. And then you go to the AL East and they stink. And the dream is fluke. That is just how it played out. And as the season goes on, when they play these AL East teams again in September, and they are playing them, like if you guys look at that September schedule from about the 10th of September on, it is a real grab your collar and go, ugh, because it is Yankees, Rays, Orioles, like it is just nonstop, and it doesn't get easy in that final month. How important? Okay, I'm trying to frame this question properly, because what I'm trying to get at is how many, I kind of want your folks' playoff predictions and just where you think the American League is going to settle out. Because even if you look at it right now, the Red Sox are 5 games above 500. They're 1 game back of the New York Yankees, who are 2 games back of the Jays, who are 5 games back of the Orioles, 2 games back of the Rays. And I can't in my lifetime think of a division that was even close to that insane at the 90 game mark. Lewis, let's start with you. Who do you see as playoff teams in the American League? And even if you wanted to focus on the AL East, do you think there are 3 teams that will make the playoffs? Do you think there's 4?
I think they're guaranteeing 2 teams out of that AL West, because Texas and Houston, they're just going to be there. Texas is having a crazy year. Out of our division, geez, man, Baltimore and Tampa are so good. They're guaranteed. I think there's a decent chance the Yankees and Boston don't make the playoffs this year in a division, and that's going to really shake some things up around baseball. Like, how does a commissioner's office look at 2 teams above 500 in Boston and New York not make the playoffs? Those are 2 of the biggest markets in sports, not in October. Like, those are big. That's a big problem for a game of baseball that needs to start growing. And I think there's a decent chance they both get pushed out. I think the Jays are, based on how they're playing now, are going to be in the playoffs. I think that's a decent thing. That's a normal thing to say, but plenty of time to let things go sideways. But I think that, yeah, I'm guessing 3 teams are coming out of this division.
Joel, what's your initial reaction when you hear the Minnesota Twins are 47-46 leading the AL Central, and the Boston Red Sox are 50-54 in dead last in the AL East? Is that good for baseball?
Central,
like, does it
merge
matter?
the Central into the other 2, right? Like, it's what is a playoff team and what are the best teams is a slightly different argument. That shouldn't be the case. It just shouldn't be the case, right? Like, you're sitting in a situation like Lewis said, where there's any 5th place team in the AL East is 1st place in the Central, right? And so that's technically, you're saying a division winner based on quality is not worthy of being in postseason. And it's this weird state of like lack of, well, you look at that Central, man, and Detroit used to be a competitive team for a long time. So I don't think the argument was really ever brought up. But then as soon as Detroit hit the skids for half a decade, then the Central just becomes this really, really lackluster division. And the restructuring, it begins to make sense, right? Like, I don't want that. I love the AL East. I love being part of the AL East and going up against everybody. You're not in the AL East. You don't even watch baseball all season. You watch like it's 4A ball, right? It's borderline minor league ball. I watch Major League Baseball. I'm in the ALs, right? And you feel that way. So it's just this confidence thing about being in where you are. But, at the same time, the best teams are not making the postseason under this format currently. So, and when a team potentially is going to make it as a division leader and maybe be under 500, right? Twins could be under 500 at the end of the year, and Red Sox could be 8 games over, and that's the playoffs. And
Michael Borland's cracking me up here in chat. He goes, if Toronto was in the Central, this chat would be bliss.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we kind of
My
are a
life
little
would be
bit
a lot better.
Central.
just to put it in perspective, by the way, the Cleveland Guardians are 4 games under 500. They're 2 games back of the AL Central lead. They are 6 games back of the last wild card spot. So I think everyone is aware the lack of parity amongst the divisions, and I don't think it's that huge of a deal, but I do think it's bad for baseball. And I think the best thing they could do is just disband the divisions. Just take the, figure out the way you want to do it and just take the top 6 teams. If that's how you do it, you just take the top 6, then run with it that way, because the AL Central is a little embarrassing to the American League, especially when you look at how tight the AL East is. And even the West, it's kind of unfair that, a team like Seattle and the Angels are already in sell mode when the Guardians are going to bolster their lineup at the deadline.
Like, compare Toronto and Detroit geographically and just tell me that one gets the luck of the draw of not really having to play tough baseball teams at all, right? It's just kind of, it just doesn't really make too much sense. It doesn't, and especially the aspect that is the AL East going anywhere, right? Is the competitiveness going to suddenly slow down over the next 2 or 3 years? Or is Baltimore probably going to be Baltimore for a decade now? Tampa Bay just always wins. The New York Yankees don't know how to not be competitive. They just always are the Yankees, and the Red Sox are the Red Sox. So this isn't going anywhere. This isn't like a trend that oh, don't worry, 2 years from now, the AL East won't be a good division. It's always an amazing, going back 20 years.
The only argument that can be made for the current system is that you don't want to punish small market teams for the fact that they're small market teams and say you never ever have a chance at making the playoffs, right? Because in which case those teams really may as well not exist, except for the fact that they generate money for ownership, I'm sure, right? To some, right? But the flip side of that is Tampa Bay is a small market team and still manages to get it done. So
yeah, Baltimore,
right? Baltimore, so that's the other side of this coin. Ultimately, it is bad for baseball to have top teams record wise who are also top spenders and have the biggest markets not make the playoffs. Like, that for the business of baseball as a whole is bad.
That is such a good point, Jen, that I didn't honestly take into consideration, is what disbanding the divisions would do to some of these small market teams. And because I am kind of like, Will says it here in chat, he says, run 2 leagues, the best make it, divisions be darned. And that is how I feel. And I also am aware, especially after hearing the argument of the small market team, that I am biased. I'm a Toronto Blue Jays fan, have watched this team get screwed by being in the AL East my entire life, right? So it's probably not fair for me to truly, act like it's not an opinion that I think that the division should be disbanded. But man, it sure is frustrating when you look at the standings and look at what's going on and realize that the best teams in baseball, there's going to be a couple of them that just don't make it. And we're going to watch the Minnesota Twins in the playoffs.
Like, one of the biggest things that really shifts the needle is Kansas City and Oakland, right? Like, not, you look at how bad they are, but like when you compare, there's no National League teams that are anywhere near as bad as Kansas City and Oakland. Kansas City and Oakland are throwing around. You go up against them, you get a 750 winning percentage across the season. They're just giving that out. Come take a 750 winning percentage against us, right? So it's just like, we don't know what that feels like in divisionally. Right? Those other 2 divisions have a team that is so in the basement, like record in the basement. You can not play our full team today. We don't know what that's like. We don't know what it's like up here in the AL East. So it's just those those lackluster low teams at the bottom, I don't even really want them to exist. I want owners to come in and completely overhaul that concept that you can sit at the bottom and make money, right? I don't want them to ever have a chance. But Tampa does. Tampa's got brilliant minds that construct a payroll into being a winning team, but I don't want that owner to sit there and go, I'm cashing checks. I never have to turn this team into a winner.
Chucharu brings up a really interesting point here. He says it feels like an MLB issue. They need to have spending floors and ceilings for teams, and if they can't keep up, replace them. And
I've
tough
always
not
thought
to
there
agree
should be
with
a
that.
floor.
Yeah. Yeah, because if there's not, you get scenarios like Baltimore. And listen, Baltimore is a great example of what you can do if you get a pile of top draft picks and have great player development. And absolutely, there are examples of organizations who have screwed that formula up. But that said, it sure is frustrating to incentivize that sort of game plan for organizations. Do you know what I mean? Like, to be like, listen, if you're a small market team, sure, just lose and don't spend for 7 years.
Because it's proven to be a winner.
It has. I mean, it's been proven it works. Look at Houston.
Houston
they're
Baltimore,
still reaping the
that
benefits of that.
yeah.
Yes.
Pittsburgh would say that they've always kind of been doing this and have yet to succeed with it. But.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great example of the flip side of the coin. I would have put the Reds in that category, but now I'm starting to be like, I'm a Cincinnati believer now. Like, I think that
they have
in a year, they're going to be
players.
They really do.
Yeah.
They really do. Okay, Joel, I know that you need to get out of here shortly. So what I'm going to do is we'll come back and we'll talk Shohei once you get out of here. But your topic, would love to hear what you're bringing to the table to talk about today.
My topic was Danny Jansen moving up the lineup. That was my topic was legitimately, I had it written down here. You brought it, you started to bring it up, and I'm like, all right, we're doing my topic like right off the bat. But yeah, I could try to swing it to a backup. Like my backup thing would have been, do we need a replacement hitter like Teo and Lourdes, so that my backup one is gone? And yes. I just dive right into Shohei. I'll go into somebody else's stuff. You don't need to do mine tonight.
Okay. Then we will go into Shohei Ohtani, because just last week, and I think the writing was on the wall once Mike Trout hit the IL and Shohei was removed from the game with his blister. And it just seemed like this push the Angels had done in 2023 to create a playoff contender just wasn't going to happen. And who knows? They're not completely out of it yet, but it's the Angels, and I have zero faith in them as a team or an organization. Now, the fact that the rumors came out that they are going to be shopping Shohei Ohtani, I mean, that's the responsible move from an organization. Lewis, would you look at the rumors floating out as anything more than that? Or do you think that they actually should be shopping him, correct? Or should they be doubling down and try and make the playoffs?
I think they're scared to say that they're shopping Shohei Ohtani, because shopping Shohei Ohtani is shopping the greatest talent baseball has ever seen. This is insane. We haven't seen it before ever. In a front office and from an owner, Art Moreno, is that his name?
Yeah.
Who is stuck up as it is when it comes to owners. It's going to be a tough pill for them to swallow. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to be one of those things where I don't think they're ever going to come out right and say it, but they're going to be listening and they're going to have serious conversations. And I think they're going to they're going to get what they deserve for Shohei. They're going to get a haul. They should trade him. They have to trade him. You can't have Shohei since 2018 and Mike Trout since 2018 and never finish above 500
for it,
and not make the playoffs and let him walk to the Dodgers in free agency. You can't let it happen.
There's no way that Ohtani as intellectually wants to resign. He's watched what this team has done with their free agent signings, which hasn't done anything. They watched the strategy of only drafting pitchers. Like that, I'm sorry, I still go back to that being one of the stupidest things I've ever seen an organization ever conceive of. We're eliminating
video game GMing. Is it how you like to see it, Joel? You know, like just
that
like,
is as video. That is as like 9-year-old picking up his video game and trying to run a baseball team as I've ever seen. That you are eliminating the players who swing the bat, catch the ball, and play baseball. You're not looking at any of them to draft, and they did that for back-to-back years. Like, there's no way Ohtani is sitting there and going, I want to be a part of this in any way, shape, or form. This is the Eric Lindros deal that made the Colorado Avalanche into a team that was
perennial contending team.
Hockey. Yeah, right. You have to look at it that way, because there's never a team there will never be a needle mover just for 2 months the way that Ohtani is. You'll never getting one player who becomes your ace and becomes your 3-hole hitter and moves around the base like a gazelle. You're never getting that rental. So that rental is the greatest rental of all time. You look at guys like Sabathia and the runs that they've gone on. Nobody will contribute 4 WAR or 5 WAR as an individual for whatever's left of the season. This guy can. This guy can put up a 1 WAR game. That's how good this guy is. So it's just like, you can't lose out on that. You lose out on that, but then you are the team that lost out on Ohtani at the same time, right? So there's no winning, right? At least in the short term. 5 years from now, when those prospects, you have to involve multiple teams. Not one team can pay off Shohei Ohtani on a rental, right? I need like the Dodgers prospects and I need the Yankees prospects. So find your way amongst yourselves to give me all of those prospects, that I'll make this deal. But that's what you're talking about for a return. So you have to make it. That's the future of this organization.
I think the obvious landing point for him is the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I think everyone would be shocked if he goes elsewhere, which will make the trade deadline incredibly interesting, because there honestly could be some players in the trade deadline that you wouldn't even in a million years think would be in on the Ohtani sweepstakes and aren't when it comes to free agency going into 2024. But how insane would it be to see a team like the Cincinnati Reds make a play for him? You know, like that's a thing too, where he lives on forever, right? You can sell an Ohtani jersey forever. How expensive, like Jen, out of curiosity, I don't even need you to guess on what it would take to bring in Ohtani, but when you look around the landscape of MLB currently, who are some organizations you can see making a play for him as a rental?
Not the Blue Jays. Because whatever it's going to cost to get him, the Blue Jays cannot pay it, period.
Yeah.
So I just want to put that out there for anybody who sort of has that pipe dream.
That dream, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Orioles could, right? The Orioles absolutely could. They have an incredibly deep farm system, and whatever they would give up for Shohei Ohtani, they would still have a good farm system. That's the insane part of it. It's almost like they've built to that point, you know? They could really go in any direction that they want to this trade season. Back to just the Angels and Shohei himself. I mean, multiple reports, he has stated that he wants to play for a contender. I think he's all but said publicly that he will not re-sign with the Angels, and he's probably told them that privately, or at least his agent has, right? Like, this ship has sailed, and know that. And it would be absolute neglect for the Angels to not trade him and get those prospects in return. Absolute neglect. It is insane that the Angels have the best player this sport has ever seen in Shohei, as well as one of the best players that has ever played the game in Mike Trout, and they have absolutely squandered both of them. Like,
it just shows you this isn't basketball, right?
What an absolute failure. Yes, absolutely. Two players cannot win you a thing, no matter how good they are. Right?
If you had Ohtani and Trout, but the basketball comparisons, they would have won the last 5 World Series, right? If that was the game that they were playing, you had 2 players of that caliber in basketball terms, endless victories, but it just doesn't, to your point, Jen, it just doesn't do it in baseball. You have to build a baseball team around the 2 greatest talents. And how sad of a legacy is that Anaheim could not just build a baseball team around those 2 absolute gods.
It is an absolute, like, to their lasting shame that they squandered, the best years of Mike Trout and squandered, this incredible unicorn that we are all just dying to see, play whenever possible, because we'll never see the likes of him again in our lifetime. It's just to their absolute lasting shame. So, but yeah, I mean, a team like the Orioles, a team like the Reds, like, these are the teams that I see potentially getting him for that rental piece because of what their farm system looks like. They won't sign him long term, obviously, but it sure as hell would make their playoff run pretty fun.
Like, that is one thing I hadn't really, it's funny because I had kind of dreamt about the Reds, and I don't know why the Orioles didn't come to mind, but boy, that's a good fit. And the thing with the Orioles that is damn scary is they could give up a buttload of prospects and, again, not really affect what they're doing going forward, especially considering this is an organization with no money on the books. So they could still go out and load up on free agents and fill those holes next season and still be far below teams' payrolls like the Blue Jays, like the Astros, like the Phillies. And that is a scary prospect.
It's the perfect landing spot in my mind. They need power. They need a pitcher of his caliber. Lefties don't have to deal with that wall out in left field. Like, it's scary how perfect of a fit that is.
I'd love to see them do it, as much as that makes
Me
the path
too.
for the Blue Jays even more challenging. I'd love to see them do it.
Yeah, I'd be for it.
Taco time.
I mean,
we can have Trout.
there's no way he winds up in a place like Baltimore.
No,
for the long term.
I don't think so.
No. But damn, as a rental, without him, like, just going to a contender and just going in there and being a ringer, I can't wait to see who gets Shohei.
and what that would do for the organization, like internally, that guy walks into your clubhouse, like that's the most ever statement that a GM has made, that I'm going for you guys, and here's the greatest piece of support you could ever have in the history of the game, right? Like, how do you not, as an organization, just get absolutely fired up if that guy walks in the doors and is playing with you, right? Like, it's such a statement, and he lives on, like you said, Scott, forever in that organization, right? We talk about Babe Ruth, we will talk about Babe Ruth forever, and we will talk about Shohei Ohtani forever, no matter if it's 3 months.
Think what David Price did for the Blue Jays. Long term, even.
Great point.
Even like, forget about just the 2.5 month window. But Shohei would quadruple that.
Yeah, because he's playing both sides of it, right? Like, the more we talk about this, the more I really want this to happen for Baltimore.
Like, you could literally have him walk in, like, we picked up an amazing bat, an amazing pitcher, and he walks in one time, and our bat, and then he walks in, he runs out the door and walks in another door. It's like, we picked up, like, it's the ultimate addition. It's just, I'm glad you guys both said it first, because it's true. Baltimore would just absolute dream location for that.
Here's a scary.
It's like it puts battery acid in your mouth just saying it, right?
Here's a scary thought. Michael Borland says dark horse for Shohei, the Astros. Ugh.
That was cool.
I don't like that idea.
I don't. Everyone's like, gross.
Yeah. They're fine.
That's not the feel-good story the Reds and Orioles are. Yeah.
I don't even want to consider that option. But yes, obviously, clearly, it is a possibility.
All right. Let's let's get a topic in before Joel has to leave us. You've got to leave now.
No, we can do one more. I'll stay for. I think I've got.
Joel, you've got a big meeting with
minutes.
the Hollywood execs. I don't want to keep you, brother. Like,
I think I've got 7 minutes. I will run at 5:25 my time.
With Tom Cruise,
I'm just jumping into another Zoom.
Yeah,
With
with Tom Cruise cut it that close.
Joel.
Absolutely, we cut it to 1 second. We cut it to 1 second. I just saw that movie. I just saw Dead Reckoning Part 1. He cut it to a millisecond. If he thought he could do both at the same time, he'd leave it to 1 second.
He could do both at the same time.
You know he could.
Lewis. Now, for everyone in chat, we do this every single Sunday. Thank you so much for following along. Hit the like button. We appreciate the love, all the comments. We get our panel to bring a topic they want to talk about. So we're going to go to Lewis here, and it doesn't have to be baseball, but knowing Lewis, my guess is it's probably baseball focused. But what topic do you have for us today, my friend?
What is your order looking like, pitching wise, going out of a wild card series into an ALDS? Because I'm thinking game 1, you go Gosman, game 2, probably Rios, game 3, Bassett. But how do you back that up going into the series? Is that a trade? Is that Manoah? Is that Kikuchi? Like, are those guys really going to have playoff starts? I just want to know your guys' confidence. And, I'm obviously confident we're going to go beyond the wild card series this year. But how does that line up starting wise?
I'll go first.
I love this question. Joel, you go first. You're the one on the timer.
Thanks.
Here.
I'm like, I think we're all pretty confident. Like Barrios and his bounce back season is gives you that confidence of Manoah taking that step out. So I'm confident 1-2, right? I think we all are with seeing Barrios and Gosman go. I still am relatively confident with Bassett, especially if you can, I think rest has been an issue for him vocally. He's mentioned that it's been really, really tough situationally over the last 6 weeks to pitch. So I think if Bassett's properly rested for the postseason, I still think he's a really solid option. The dependency on whether, the expectation of whether Manoah can come back and literally deliver to this team, right? He can hypothetically give you a stretch of 5 starts where you may be considering him to be your number 2 again. That's not out of the question. It's possible that we all get reinvigorated and see him do it for 5 games, and we think that the Manoah of old is back. So that's a situation where you may not see him, but if he performs, he can move all the way up to 2 or 3. So I think the Jays right now as an organization will lean towards Ryu coming back and being competitive. I don't think that they would make a move for another starting pitcher. So I think that your order is going to be what you see on the team right now. I think that their moves will be more offense oriented. So I think it's that situation of, 2 for sure. Manoah has the ability to move up into that slot, but you can't trust him for anything right now. I don't think any of us are putting him to start a postseason game at the moment. So, whether it's Kikuchi, whether you're doing something like starting a potential opener situation where you feel like you're in a game that you need to win, and maybe starting Trevor Richards for 2 innings is the best thing to do for the team. Like, I think it's, once again, comes down to that ability of just whatever best arm you need for that situation, you can throw it out, and having guys like, if you're up against like a lefty heavy team, you may see Kikuchi as an opener, right? But I think that's if you're only seeing Kikuchi for 4 innings, he's going to be an opener come postseason.
Yeah.
So I think that's my 2 cents.
There was one guy I was thinking of, and just thinking about the back half of the rotation with Kikuchi and Manoah, they're kind of moving into almost less of starting pitchers and more bulk pitchers. Like Kikuchi today, the staff didn't trust him to finish that 3rd time through. Manoah, they don't trust him at all, So I'm thinking, with the expansion of the roster going into September, there's a chance you can have a guy on the roster who, has that Mitch White role, but is a little better. Like, could you get Jack Flaherty, a bit cheaper rental, a bit on the tougher side, but that's a guy who give you 4 innings behind, you say Kikuchi. Suddenly you put 3 innings here, 4 innings there. your inning and your bullpen doesn't have to cover as much. Or Seth Lugo is a guy I really like. He's a guy who's been starting this year doing well and also has experience in the bullpen in a postseason series. Like he can give you from 3 all the way to 7 innings. Like that's the fit I really like. So yeah, I think there is one, if there is going to be one acquisition in there, it's going to be a guy who's going to give us bulk for considerably cheap based on the how expensive some of these starting pitching options are going to be at the deadline.
So if you're looking at starting a playoff game non-traditionally, right? So with an opener and then a bulk guy, whoever those people might be, are you looking at doing that in the wild card series so that you can start the next year? Like, I'm just wondering how you're lining up that where that bulk guy opener and bulk guy come in.
When it comes to the wild card, it's win the game you're playing. So it's go your guy, Barrios, Bassett, whoever that is. Bullpen, everyone's up, everyone's ready to go. ALDS is when you can kind of give yourself some breathing room because one loss isn't going to end it. A wild card series, it's like if you lose that first game of a wild card series, you got to win 2 straight, and you're done.
No, but I'm wondering, like, so for instance, if you have Gausman go game 1 of the wild card series and you win that game, right? Do you consider using the bulk situation in game 2, knowing you've still got a bullet in the chamber for game 3? I'm just asking. I'm curious where your mindset would be for that.
Nope.
I'm kind of in the same boat as Lewis. After last year, you get through that wild card no matter what. Like
kind of almost like the stripling.
I can't see getting cute. Yeah.
No, I don't either, but it does open up a lot of conversation.
Yeah, Oakland did that in the wild card round 2018 against Tampa. They could have gone Chris Bassett, but they went Sean Manaea. They got eliminated, and I remember that was like, because should have gone with the guy that you trusted all year.
So,
that's it for me,
and I
guys.
love.
I have to roll.
Yeah,
bye,
Joel.
Thanks
you so
everybody.
much for your time. Take care. Best of luck, buddy. Knock it out of the park. Cheers.
Go Jays.
Okay, so I love this question, Lewis. Just the mental exercise of it. So number 1, I think this is why I want to see a 6-man rotation for a little while in the next 6 weeks at a point. Because when I look at Kevin Gausman, he's got to be your horse, right? You've got to overuse him in the playoffs. You've got to go to him every big moment. So if he starts game 1 of the wild card, he is starting game 1 of the division series for me, even if it's on short rest. And I hate short rest, and hopefully it all works out that that's not the case, right? You know, I don't know how the scheduling is actually going to work out, but even if you have to go short rest, I'm going with Kevin Gausman game 1. I'm going with Jose Barrios. Same thing. Those are your horses. Those are the guys that are going to give you the most innings in the season. They're the guys that I feel the most confident in. And then from there, I almost hope they do bolster this rotation a little bit with a guy you could go in that scenario. Don't get me wrong. I do have faith in Chris Bassett, but I do worry that as you progress in the playoffs, that those top 3 aren't enough. It could be. I mean, look at what Philadelphia did with their rotation last year, right? Like it's been proved time and time again. You can win with 2 horses. But that game 3, I kind of got to go question mark on that one. After going to Gausman and Barrios, like, I like what you're saying about the bulk guys, and maybe you do that. I think Kikuchi's in the bullpen by that point. I can't see Kikuchi in any way starting. He might not even be on the playoff roster. Who knows? Fun little mental exercise. I don't know.
Well, and if you're looking at starting both Gausman and Barrios on short rest in the playoffs, then it does behoove them to maybe have that 6-man rotation, or at least sprinkle in the 6-man when you have long stretches without a day off right now, to try to build in some of that rest.
Like, how do you feel about that, Jen? Like, just the idea of like riding Barrios and Gausman hard come the playoffs.
I mean, those are that is what you are supposed to expect from your best pitchers. So, you know, theoretically, yes, absolutely. Right now, what is the current update on Gausman and his injury? Like, I know
last I heard was the MRI came back clean and he's
Right.
sore and they're playing it. Hopefully he's fine by this extra day's rest. But that's a great question.
Right. There needs to be caution taken there because, you know, it's one thing for him to feel well enough to make his next start, but is it something that could be aggravated? I have no idea.
By the way, I do trust Chris Bassett. Like, he is a wily old veteran and I don't mind him going in a game 3 at all. TT here says can't pay a guy 60 million plus to not start game 3. That's a really good point. And I actually don't feel shitty about Bassett starting game 3. I just looking into the ALCS. Now you're like, what 4 guys are you rolling with? Or are you just like, screw it at that point? We're going on short rest. Everyone's going on short rest. We're rolling with 3 starters. It's the playoffs. You do or die with your top guys.
Yeah. Teams have done it before.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, I think that's what you need, right? Like, I think that's what you have to expect from those guys, especially when they are veteran players, right? Like, these guys have been around the block. They're not, yeah. They
Quick
shouldn't
update
be
here for you,
blinded by
Jen.
sorry.
No, I'll let you carry on here in a second, but quick update. Ian Ross chimed in here with a tweet from Mitch Bannon, friend of the show here with Sports Illustrated covering the Jays. He says, Gausman's side will not start in the Padres series. Blue Jays going Manoah, Barrios, Bassett to give Gausman a little bit of extra rest per John Schneider. So there's the update on Kevin Gausman. But again, good. Because I want him, I want to overuse him in September and October. So if they've got to give him an extra day rest here, especially with the All-Star break, the fact that Ryu is close, but the fact they could give some of these guys a breather, frickin' go for it, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. That's what I was going to say, like erring on that side of caution now, in the hopes that he's good to go down the road. Absolutely.
And that's all we hope, right? Fingers crossed that it's erring on the side of caution and this isn't more.
Right. Because if it is more at all, then they absolutely have to pick up a starter at the deadline. And
with that, yeah, they need Stroman at that. Yeah. Like they need Blake Snell, who fill in a top 3 guy is what I'm saying. All right.
Well, it's funny because just as you were saying that, I was about to say, and just for the record, it will not be Stroman.
I don't think there's any way it's Stroman either. I was actually really surprised to see those reports. For those who didn't hear in the chat, the reports that came out from the Cubs reporters that the Blue Jays are at the top of the interested list for Marcus Stroman.
I don't know those reports just generate likes and retweets and clicks and engagements, to be completely honest, right? To suggest that Stroman is going to go back to his previous team where there was contentious issues. We'll leave it at that. To suggest that definitely gets the engagement going. Whether or not they actually have legitimacy behind tweeting it is a whole. Because this is the time of year people need to also remember when agents and teams will say anything.
So, Jen, you're telling me that people on Twitter will just tweet things out without any sort of background or knowledge?
You know what? I know it's shocking. I know, right? I know everyone thinks that Twitter is the place of honesty.
All right. That was an excellent topic, Lewis. Thank you so much, my dude. Jen, we're going to go to you here. You...
Some of the things that I kind of come up with, like Chapman and third base was kind of where I was going with it. Okay, so I guess two sort of smaller topics, and you could pick one or both. If you're the Jays, what are you doing with Whit Merrifield? Right, it's the option on Whit Merrifield. So that would be one possible question there. The other question, and this just stemmed from a sports talk radio show that I was listening to the other day. What is an ace how many aces do you think are in MLB? Is Kevin Gausman an ace?
Ooh, I like that. Lewis, what do you think, my dude? Is Kevin Gausman an ace, and what do you consider an ace?
It's my definition of an ace has changed a lot, all because of Alek Manoah. That guy is played with my heart a little bit. But Gosman is an ace through and through. He's a guy that even when he doesn't have good stuff, he goes out there and does a job. Like he had a start in Kansas City where he was throwing his fastball like 89. And I was like, man, he's just still doing it. And that was Manoah to a large extent that year, where when he didn't have good stuff, he was still grinding through these games. So that's why I'm always so almost angry at Manoah for just being a guy who could do this and then still giving it up this year. But in baseball, I'd have to look at the numbers, but there's probably like 15 to 20 true aces and maybe 2 or 3 teams who have 2. So that's probably how and my definition is just a guy who does the job. And Manoah didn't do the job last year. So that's why my definition is kind of, moved around a little bit. But Gausman just does the job.
So for me, track record matters. And it's why I was a little hesitant to put the ace moniker on Alek Manoah, as much as he was the ace of the staff last year, right? If you're giving the term ace to the number one pitcher on a team, then Alek Manoah was without a doubt our ace last year. But Kevin Gausman has done it year after year after year, and this is the 4th year in a row now where he has just been the top guy. And I mean, even when Alek Manoah was at the top of that rotation last year, Kevin Gausman was lights out. Kevin Gausman's numbers were incredible. Kevin Gausman was there when they needed him. Even when Manoah would have the odd letdown, Kevin Gausman was right behind him to be the stopper. And it was a really great thing for the team to have 2 guys like that. And honestly, we're kind of seeing it out of Jose Barrios and Kevin Gausman this year, that 1-2 punch. I think Kevin Gausman is an ace at this point. I kind of feel like you, Lewis, that there's probably about 15 to 20 of them in the league. Not every team has an ace. 2 or 3 are paying for 2. Yeah, that's where I'm at on Kevin Gausman. And as for Whit Merrifield, this is such a I just love this question because there's so many different, just different elements of this deal to consider, right? Like, is $18 million to pick up his option too much? Does he like Toronto enough that the mutual option goes? I mean, I guess for $18 million, he's probably pretty quick to grab that because I can't see him making more than that on the open market. Can you sit down with his agents and his representation and work out a 2-year deal? Listen, Whit Merrifield is 34 years old. I'm not necessarily let's double down on Whit, but he has been excellent for this team. He has provided some versatility and the ability to move him around the diamond, as well as a guy who hits differently than most of this lineup. Right? Like when you look at Whit Merrifield and what he brings to the plate, he hits for average. He has speed. He's a good base runner. He brings stolen bases to the plate. 18 million's way too much for Whit Merrifield. Mark Ryan's just right there with me. It's just too much money for him. But can they get him for 2 years at 18 million? Maybe that's worth it. Where are you at, Jen? Do you want to see Whit Merrifield on this team in 2024?
I think what he's done for the team this year, makes me want the team to try to get him for the next couple of years. Absolutely. If it's $18 million for 1 year, no. But if they could work out a deal of some sort and get the next 2-3 years out of him, if he likes it here, if he looks at that as being that guaranteed money versus, I don't know what other teams would offer him, right? I don't think any team's offering him $18 million for 1 season, so, yeah, if you could get him for 2 years, 15 million, I don't know. I really don't know because I haven't looked at the market. Then I think you absolutely try to do that deal. And hopefully his side looks at it. With regards to the ace, I never considered Manoah to be an ace for what you said, Scott, which is the longevity side of it. So Manoah might have been their best pitcher last season, but that didn't make him an ace, right? The best
Putting up
pitcher,
ace numbers, just
right? But
yeah.
he hadn't done it year over year, where you league wide could take a look at him and say that is an ace, right? I do think that longevity piece has to factor in, and this is why I will die on the hill that they should not have started him in game 1 of the wild card series.
Yeah.
They should have gone with Gausman because of the experience. Strictly, if you're looking at the two of them, I would have gone with the experience in that game. Again, I will die on that hill. Absolutely. Gausman, yeah, I do think he's an ace. I don't know if there's 20 in the league. I was thinking more 10 to 15, but I haven't actually sat down and written out a list of names.
Michelle Marie says 2 for 20 for Witt and a promise that Vladdy won't ice bath him.
Yeah, I do build that into the contract because that's that was, yeah.
I'm a little bit on the opposite of Witt, actually. I think this will be his last year as a J.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, probably.
I think, yeah. Dude, that trade is like amazing. You traded 2 guys who are not going to be contributors to this team for a guy who finds his way onto the baseball field every day and does the job. Like, say your thanks, say thank you, Witt, for what you've done. He's having his best year since 2019. Like, just take what you get and let him walk off into free agency as a 34-year-old, see what he gets.
Yeah. And he hasn't had an OPS plus season above 100 since, like you said, 2019. Yeah. Like, and he's well above that this year and has been a contributor in every spot they've put him. Whit Merrifield, man. Yeah. Like, who saw it coming?
Thank you for your service.
Yeah. So my topic, and we kind of touched on this, but there's a 40-man roster crunch coming up. Mitch White, with a 5-run lead, was brought into this game. And they still had to go to Eric Swanson. I understand this organization's fear of giving up an asset that they paid for. This is something, and you know what? Trevor Richards is a great example of sometimes just waiting it out really is the best play. That said, with limited spots in that bullpen coming up on the most important part of the season, it would be nice if, especially if you are going to go with that 6-man rotation, if all 7 bullpen pieces you could rely on, or at least rely on to the point where you don't need to use a high leverage guy in a low leverage game last minute with an out left. What is the chance of Mitch White being just straight up DFA'd before the end of this season?
I said on this show last year that I did not want him anywhere near this team. That is still where I'm at. He has not demonstrated the ability to get the job done for this team, flat out. And if you can't trust him with a 5-run lead, then what good is he? What role does he have? There is no role for him. I think that just right there answers the question. You DFA him. I don't know if a team will pick him up. I have absolutely no idea. But I think at some point you have to cut your losses.
My big concern is that, it's not a concern, but it just adds to the intrigue as to what they do with this guy, is the trade deadline. They're going to add major league players. They're most likely not going to be taking players off of this major league roster. So that just increases the crunch. And I know you're a Mitch White supporter, Lewis, or have been in the past. Where are you at on this guy? And do you think in this contention window that, like, don't get me wrong, if this was Kansas City, you keep Mitch White because he might pan out in a year or two, and you're not a playoff team anyways, but not the Kansas City Royals. Where are you at, Lewis, on Mitch White?
Mitch White is one of the more frustrating guys I've ever tried to support in my short Jays tenure as a fan. He doesn't make it easy on me, but I seriously believe there's a major league pitcher somewhere in this guy, and I think the Jays do too. They traded for him. They gave up a pretty significant asset in Nick Frasso for him. I think they were also smart with also getting Alex De Jesus in the trade as well. Like, that is a backup value in that trade where if things don't work out with White, you can sit back and you have a prospect that is doing very well this year. So I don't know. Mitch White, he's throwing hard this year. That's one thing. He's throwing upwards of 94 on the fastball. His fastball shape has improved. It has more ride. And his slider's been getting more sweep this year. Those are two things that I think, along with our new bullpen coach hirings, have, really helped within the entirety of the bullpen, but also Mitch White's process, right? And I think they're just trying to rebuild Mitch White from the start. They've given him a new fastball. They said we're tweaking some things with the slider as well. And like, look at Richards. That guy in 2020, his ERA was 5.3, and he stayed in the bullpen. He pitched 60 innings with a 5.3 ERA on a team that went to the postseason. The Jays don't like giving up on guys, especially pitchers that they've given up assets for. So I don't think they'll DFA Mitch White. I think he'll remain on the team, and with an off season, to stay healthy, to keep working, and to fix the repertoire and get things lined up, he'll become a part of the pitching staff because they trust him.
Andrew Stoughton had a great tweet where he said, the position that Mitch White has been best at this season has been the IL.
Has been the IL. That was really good. I like that one. Yeah. But like, look at Mitch White, right? Sample size is a really big thing. Before this inning today, his ERA was 3.7. Today it came out a little higher, but his expected numbers look fine. And if he keeps showing process with the good fastball and the good slider, eventually walks will clear up. Eventually guys will start missing the baseball. I'm pretty confident, and I think the Jays are, that he'll eventually have a more significant impact than being a guy just clogging a roster spot.
And yes, by the way, Dalchmarist, White is out of options too, ? I forgot about that. And yes, White is out of options. There is no way to put him anywhere, but Will says put White on the Phantom 60-day IL. I mean,
I don't think he'll be on the postseason.
You're not legally allowed to do it, but we might see something like that. Who knows? The Blue Jays definitely protect their assets. We finished a little early here. I do have an emergency topic that I thought that we've got the time for it. So let's do it. Basically, when you look around, what I was doing the other day is I was looking at the roster and being like, where could they improve at a position? Like, what position could you see a surprise move from? The one I came up with is our most crowded position, which is second base. And this is only based on, by the way, this is based on Whit Merrifield playing so much time in the outfield. When you guys look at the roster, when you two look at it, is there a spot where you could see maybe a surprise move being made? I mean, obviously a bat is a bat, and they definitely need a bat. And I know there's been comments in the or something like that. Jen?
If Mitch White could hit,
problem solved.
There you go. So when you started the question about other places where they could improve, second base is really the only position that comes to mind. And I mean, I suppose they could add a bat at that position, right? Like if they couldn't pick up, for going back to old friend Teoscar, for instance, the need for a bat is there, and regardless, right, second base would be, I guess, the next best option of where you would put that bat in the lineup. I don't know. I would be surprised if that was the route they went.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Dalchmaris says they could upgrade the mascot.
I think they're just, they're invested in Biggio.
Yeah.
They're Espinal. I don't see them doing that as much as I, for a long time, have wanted them to move on from Biggio. I would be absolutely shocked if that's what they did.
I know
that's another thing I wanted to bring up.
I'll throw to you here in a second, Lewis. I'm just bringing up chat where they say Jordan Luplow is absolutely raking in AAA right now. So that is, if you want to try and catch kind of lightning in a bottle, that might be an option. Go ahead, Lewis.
That was another thing I just wanted to bring up with, reactions to pitchers doing badly. And because like Kevin Biggio, I was just thinking about this now you brought him up. Kevin Biggio is a guy who struggled forever, and he's a guy the Jays continue to hold on to. Like failure for a hitter happens over a month. Like you don't really have a bad month until you've been playing for a month. But the pitcher, one day it looks really bad. That's just, that was just one thing I wanted to say. But then on top of that, with the Whit Merrifield thing, I think you fix him positionally at second base by getting a left fielder. When Whit Merrifield doesn't have to go into the outfield, he's your everyday second baseman, and that fixes a lot of things. Yeah. And that other position I was thinking of for a trade, catcher. Imagine putting another guy back there. I was thinking, Kirk, you might find a reason to put that guy on the IL and pick up a guy like, I know, Yan Gomes, not a great hitter, but decent behind the plate, World Series winner in 2019. He's a guy you can put back there and be like, we have a World Series winning catcher back there, So I think catch is a sneaky spot where they might say, Kirk, we're going to hit you with this Phantom IL or find something wrong with you and just let you get your feet back under you.
That is interesting. And I mean, a veteran catcher you see added to contenders all the time. For that exact reason.
Yeah.
I know that this was not expertly done, but I went over the last 10 years of catcher experience on World Series winners. And there was not a team that had less than 13 years experience except for the Los Angeles Dodgers in 2020. And they had 9 years of experience, and they were running with Will Smith, who was like 18 months into his career.
Kirk could be sent to Buffalo, could he not?
He could.
Like, you don't have to IL him.
No, you could.
Nope,
you could.
You're absolutely right.
And again, it would be a shame because Alejandro Kirk's game in every aspect outside of what he's doing at the plate has been incredible, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he has improved his defense on every aspect and is a top 5 catcher in the league when it comes to framing and blocking and just all the stuff that makes a good catcher. Unfortunately, his bat has been about as ice cold as it possibly could be. I know I brought it up at the beginning of the show, but he's got an OPS under 300 for July. Like it's July 16th. I know there was an all-star break, and I know that we're getting the sample size is getting smaller, but that is just disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think we'll wrap it there. We're about 10 minutes short of what we normally do, but without a 6-person panel, this really flies through, So I just want to thank you, Jen. Thank you so much for coming on. And Lewis, you two really came up big.
No worries. I know you've already talked about this, I'm sure, on another episode. I just want to bring up how fantastic I think it is that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. won that home run derby.
Yeah.
Just, if that ignites anything in him, like going out and having fun and winning it with the shade that was being thrown at him on the broadcast the entire way through, and the exhaustive comparisons to his father. Just, I normally don't care who wins as long as it's a good show. But for him to go out and win that, I just have to say, good for him. Thrilled to see it. Really hope that, that momentum for him just keeps going, because him getting hot, that in and of itself would be huge for this team. So I just wanted to end on that final note.
I agree with you, Jen. Vladdy's energy has shifted since that home run derby. Truly, you see it in his body language. You see it in the way he's playing the game. He's got his smile back.
Rejuvenated.
And I mean, listen, I do want to reiterate that Vladdy was struggling mightily, and of course, you're not happy, you're not smiling when you're struggling. You know, like I don't want to say that it's just like the home run derby fixed Vladdy, but it kind of fixed Vladdy. Like, I mean, short sample size and everything, and knock on all the wood, but I feel good about Vlad right now. Like, Lewis, when you look at Vlad over this last series, even the last couple series, do you feel like old Vlad is back?
He's always there, man. I think it really just comes down to his approach and just where he's hitting the baseball. I think my biggest problem with the Jays this year has been their terrible maximizing of balls in play. Like, I love an opposite way single from Bo Bichette as much as the next guy, but Vladimir Guerrero Jr. needs to be pulling that ball in the air, and that home run derby was just perfect. Just seeing him sitting back, turning on that ball inside and launching it over the left field wall. He didn't have a ball right of center field hit for that home run derby, not one to center. And so to see him hit that homer, first AB back, and that was the first home run derby winner to ever do that in the first AB back. So yeah, I think just get Vlad pulling that ball in the air, and yeah, like the guy who went up
the double he hit today, he just missed it
against Mookie Betts. That guy's more home runs than him this year, and his home run derby was terrible. Yeah,
agreed.
I'm excited for what Vlad can do this.
This is a text from my buddy Jason, and he just said, "What if the water bucket is full of home run jackets? Problem solved. 2 birds, 1 stone."
Yeah, 2 birds, 1 stone. Yeah,
he sure loved putting that jacket on after the derby. You could just see he loved it.
It looked good.
Right, it's back. Yeah,
absolutely. You know what? And I mean, clearly they're not bringing back the jacket because it would have happened by now. But I did think, like, okay, then come up with something, right? Like, you got to have something. But seeing that really was, yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, don't bring back the jacket, bring back Teo.
Well, so then maybe instead of a bucket full of ice water, it's a bucket full of sunflower seeds.
There, Mr. Seeds, bring them back. We'll end on that. Again, thank you so much, Lewis and Jen. We actually had over 100 viewers at times throughout the cast. So thank you so much for your time. Jen obviously is our veteran, our go-to here. So we'll see her again next week. Lewis, can't wait to have you back, brother. All the best with how's the baseball season going, buddy?
Arm has been a little bit hurt recently, but overall not too bad.
Well, heal
I'm the
up.
AAA call up
for you. There you go. Yeah. You're the AAA call up. Right on. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. All the best. Take care. We'll see you later. And again, Adam's not here. He will be back tomorrow. He's looking for his camera and all this stuff to podcast in his moving boxes as we speak. All the best, everybody. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, so I'm just going to end it here, even though we're still live. But again, thanks, Jen and Lewis. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.